Event is going to be a combination of performances and a sort of digital gallery as well as a talk. We're very excited about this talk that combines three artists, Itting, Robert Henke, and Alexandra Cárdenas, from different backgrounds and different practices that have very interesting things to say. And here is Amelia, who will be interviewing them. So enjoy, and again, thank you so much for joining us tonight at Body of...
Sorry about the undertone.
Thank you so much, Antonio. Can everyone hear me okay? These levels are good. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us. Welcome to Body of Work 2. Wow, I'm getting ahead of myself. Welcome to Body of Work number 2, and we're so pleased to be joined by a pretty astonishing panel, if I do say so myself, of amazing artists who are going to talk to us today about their bodies of work. They're going to speak about their oeuvres, they're going to speak about key moments in their histories, but also what they're doing now. I'm also going to look ahead to the future to ask them a little bit about how they feel about certain trends and certain ideas that are cropping up in a very general sense. To introduce myself, my name is Amelia. I come from an academic background. My research is in visual poetics and poetry studies, but I've been really interested in art and science for the last 10 years or so, and I run an art science networking program called the Art Science Salon, which is how I got involved with the Body of Work Collective. Which, as you may know, if you've even had a glance at the event description, aims to bring together, in a very historical sense, legends from the Berlin scene, from old VJ scenes, from early electronic music, basically pioneers who have left their mark on Berlin as a city in terms of artistic structure, in terms of artistic contributions, and to link them in no small way with the art that's been made now, and to get them to approach in a very sort of a rhizomatic way, if you will, how these ideas and how their motivations and artistic desires and expressions correlate and correspond with the world as we have it now. So just a quick word as well about our title tonight at the event. So we went with the title RAVE and RHIZOME because at Body of Work we feel that we're going to firmly reject historical time. We're not working on a chronological or linear approach. We're talking about the way that different ideas and different histories interconnect across time and across cities and across artistic mediums, even though the focus tonight is quite digital. And we really want to view that the club or the space that we're in now as a sort of entryway into these ideas, a kind of portal of sorts that you can make sense of no matter where you approach it from or no matter how you come into it. So in that sort of sense, we're very passionate about bringing a little bit of cultural theory to the club in that sense. And while we're in this amazing space, for anyone who hasn't been to Studio 1111 before, you can see we have this 270-degree projection, which is showing, in case you hadn't realized, excerpts and works by the artists that we're about to interview. So this is a kind of amazing way of being fully immersed, not just through this conversation together, but being fully immersed in their works, because it's literally surrounding you, which again is why we chose the subtitle The Club as the Evening. So I'm really excited to introduce properly our three artists. So we have Alexandra Cárdenas, Itting, and Robert Henke. I'm going to do a quick reading of the bio just for formality's sake, and I'm going to introduce Alexandra first. Then what we're going to do is have a conversation with each one of our artists, and then we will open it up to sort of more general panel discussion between our featured guests, and then there will be a Q&A. So be thinking of your questions, be thinking of what might you want to ask any one of these fantastic artists, and we'll get into it. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Alexandra first. So Alexandra Cárdenas is a Colombian composer, improviser, and live coding artist based in Berlin. Trained in classical composition and holding an MA in sound studies from UDK, she is a central figure in the global live coding and Algorave communities, co-founding top lab nodes in Mexico and Berlin. Her work merges composition, programming, and improvisation using Super Collider and tidal cycles. She has performed and taught internationally, spoken at Transmediale and Ableton Loop, and held residencies at Tokyo Wonder Site in Japan and the Center for the Arts in Mexico City. She also co-founded Live Codera, supporting women in live coding. Alexandra, you're very welcome. Kai Itting is an award-winning German multimedia and installation artist, sculptor, photographer, and technologist, now based in Paris. A founding member of the influential Berlin collective Mediamorph, he helped pioneer digital club visuals in the early 1990s, co-founded the groundbreaking Chromapark Techno art exhibition at RAVE in 1994. He's also the founder of Dub Studio in Paris. Through Mediamorph, Kai became a key figure at the intersection of techno, art, and emerging digital culture. His live video work appeared across events like the Love Parade, Tresor, UFO, Low Spirit Records, Sonar, Art Futura, and collaborations with La Fura, Dels Baus, Van Gogh TV, and Herbert Grönemeyer. In a single decade marked by rapid cultural and technological change, he produced over 350 live video shows and installations, performing for audiences from underground rooms to stadium crowds. Very welcome to Kai. And finally, I'm delighted to introduce Robert Henke, who is a Berlin-based composer, audio-visual artist, software designer, and engineer. As one of the most influential figures in electronic music, he was one of the key developers of the music production platform Ableton Live, which some of you may have heard of, contributing to its instruments, effects, and workflow design, reshaping how electronic music is created and performed worldwide today. Under the Monolake project with Gerhard Belis, with releases on the pioneering minimal dub techno label Chain Reaction, he merges engineering, sound, and algorithmic systems into landmark works such as Lumière, Deep Web at Kraftwerk with Christopher Bauder, Fundamental Forces with Tarek Barry, Fragile Territories, and CBM, based on Commodore hardware. His installations and performances have appeared at Tate Modern, Centre Pompidou, Kunstwerk Berlin, Unsound, Mutek, and more. Henke has taught at Stanford, Budapest, Berlin, and in Paris, and remains a defining force in electronic music and audiovisual art. So big welcome to Robert Henke. So we have one microphone that's going to have to be shared between all three of you. I don't foresee this being a problem until we get to the section of our interview where I'm speaking to all three of you. But I'm going to start with Alexandra. So my first question for you is, throwing it wide open, you're a coder, but you've also a pioneer in the Algorave space. So can you just tell us a little bit, for anyone who may not have known, what is an Algorave and what is live coding in your sphere?
That should be hello. Okay. Hey everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really proud to be part of this amazing panel. That feedback also. Well, Algorave is the party of the live coders. So it was a joke once people started making music live with Super Collider, meaning that Super Collider was able to render changes in the sound immediately. People started making music, but it was born in a very academic environment. So composers were making music more abstract and more in the electroacoustic tradition. But once they were having a joke, and someone said, "Oh no, we could make dance music as well with the live coding with Super Collider." Oh yeah, that would be like an algorithmic rave. Yeah, that would be an algorithm. And that was a joke, and now it's a whole movement of people making and trying to make people dance with dance music that is being live coded. So live coded is engaging with the algorithms in computer language in real time.
Of course. Putting yourself in that space, however, I think exposes quite a lot of vulnerability because it needs to totally reconfigure your relationship to mistakes, right? Because you're literally laying yourself bare. And something that I want to ask the panel in general later on as well is how they configure themselves as artists in relation to the audiences that are attending their events or their performances. But I was wondering if you could say a little bit about, again, the vulnerability of live coding at an Algorave. How do you feel about exposing yourself so readily to the mistakes that are right there on the screen for anybody who knows officially what's going on?
It was very difficult, I have to say. It is still very difficult because I was trained as a musician that shouldn't make mistakes. So for many years playing classical guitar, mistakes were like really something to avoid. And then as a composer also, because you're supposed to know more about instruments, you can make errors and writing case for the instrument. So it was many years of fighting against errors. And I think what the live coding community brought me was this capacity of being myself without having the pressure of, oh, if I make a mistake, I'm a bad artist, and I'm a bad person. Instead, it was like realizing that errors are part of art, the same way errors are part of life. And I think that's why live coding has been a great environment for me to grow up and discover my own voice, because it is a very celebratory space. No matter what you do, people will always clap. Remember that later. And then it is always like everything you do is welcome because we're having fun. So it was out of this very schematic, snobist, academic environment where you should pretend to be something that you're not. And it was more welcoming the authenticity of being who you are. Even if you know only 2 words of code, you can already make music with that. I'm not a programmer, I'm not an engineer. I program music now because I learned that through this practice. So the fact that the community is so welcoming and so different from all the institutions that we know that have been meddling with music opened this space not only for me but for many other people, because vulnerability is a very rich space for artists. No matter your background, but when you're vulnerable and you show it, you're very authentic, and that connects to something that is very sublime in the arts.
Absolutely. I think that's a very beautiful way of phrasing what is a very scary and vulnerable place to put yourself in during live performance. Was there a moment or a particular time in your life that you realized code could be an instrument, in the sense that classical instruments might be?
Yeah, I was in Mexico City. I was living there, and I wanted to make a yoga mat to play the electric guitar. Because I didn't want to use all the pedals. I wanted to make my yoga mat in which I would move, and then I would trigger some effects in Super Collider. And this project took me to here now, and who knows, like that was the moment where I realized, oh, technology, I can appropriate technology, I can create it, and I can do things that make me happy and bring to life my stupid or crazy ideas, and they have a place. So it was this learning with Max and XP first, and then for political reasons in the National Center for the Arts in Mexico, we switched to open source software only, so no more Max and XP, which was a blessing for many of us to be able to have our own software and not be able to hack it, because most of us couldn't afford that. So for the Latin American community, it was very important. And as a woman, I have to say, there are so many intersections here that just having a PC with a software that I'm not hacking made me, I was feeling super powerful, because I didn't have to book expensive computers. I didn't have to wait until an ensemble could play my piece. I was making my own sounds there, and this was a full liberation. So going back to the moment was that when it took me very long time to learn Super Collider. It has quite a steep curve. But once I started making a few sounds and I could control them as a composer, that's when I said, this is a musical instrument. This is my game.
What a fantastic answer. I'm going to jump off the back of something you just said there and ask you a little bit about hierarchy and access within the live coding community, because there's definitely a kind of openness that the live code community likes to promote and share. But do you feel that there are any boundaries at the moment or obstructions in terms of accessibility with this community? I mean, obviously it's wonderful when, the resources are open source and you can play to audiences around the world, but do you feel that there's still kind of obstructions in face?
Well, of course, you need to have a computer. Not everybody owns a computer. You need to understand English. Most software is written in English. So those are already natural barriers. But thinking about the population who have access to this and the internet. Then I think the community has made a good job at thinking about being very inclusive. And we think and rethink our code of content. Because we are humans and we are always having conflicts with each other, even if we think we are the same because we like the same things. So you're a feminist, I'm a feminist, and you're Latin, I'm Latin. There's always inner conflicts that are very difficult to manage. So I think the create the code of conduct is very important here. And the other thing is that we as a community have made a big effort to demystify programming, demystifying music. I grew up in an environment in the conservatory in Colombia to start, but where music was only this, and you were only a musician if you had a degree. And that was very limiting. And I did it, but I didn't feel any musician when I had my degree. I started feeling a musician when I was starting doing my things with my code, and that was my voice, you know? So yeah, there's always trouble, and the community is growing so much. Now we have artists who are becoming viral in TikTok and whatever. So we have thousands of people coming, and along with them come people to have different mentalities and different ideas of what's. So right now we're like debating what's gonna happen with AI, what's gonna happen with this tech bro culture that is appropriating things, and for them it's so easy to make something, and how what can we do? Not against it, because I don't think against woodwork, but how can we protect these spirits and keep these things available for our own? That's something the community is always questioning. And for me personally, I travel the world teaching, and I teach every kind of audiences. So I teach equally composers or computation people who are experts in software and stuff, but I also teach people who are not expert in many of these things. So I think that's a kind of ethos at the community key.
So do you feel that there's a particular city or country or community where live coding is strongest? Because your track record is very international, and as is the live coding community. There seems to be algorithms popping up everywhere, especially in the last few years. Do you feel that there's a city or a community but it's especially strong?
I think Barcelona is kind of leading the thing. So it's a very good route. One of them was started in Mexico with me. We started our monthly live sessions in Mexico, and then came up to Barcelona, and then they started there. And that is a very organized, very open community. But there's also, of course, in the UK, when it started, basically, Germany as well. Anything. The Hague, like the Utrecht and the Netherlands is quite steep way.
Most of those cities are a little bit surprising to me in a great way. You know, I wouldn't have necessarily thought that they would be so strong. So it's wonderful to hear. When people are watching your performance, do you feel they're watching the performer, or are they watching code, or are they enjoying the whole experience? Like in your experience of performing, where is the focus of the attention with the audience?
I think the screen, because we're so visual and so the screen takes our attention, and that's something I like personally, because I love the stage, but I'm very shy. So I found this mix of having something that people can look at. It takes a bit pressure from this little girl inside me who's very shy. But I have played for many different audiences, and I have heard so many different comments from people saying, "Oh, the code distracts me. I had to look somewhere else." I had people saying, "Programmers, I love when some programmer understands the code and then understands the music and comes in front to dance and say, I know how they did that." So that's very pretty cool to see. So I think for everybody it's a different experience.
I really like what you said there about, like the different levels that someone can access the Algorave, and even someone like myself, who's not a coder, I love. And even if I'm just seeing the abstract code as a sort of visual, it's still prompting sort of reflection. So it seems as if there's a great opportunity for learning there. Like live coding can actually be educational in a sense, like not to get too nerdy about it, but like it seems like a good opportunity there. Do you find that as well? Like, do you find that it has any potential as a tool for learning in your own experience?
Definitely, and that's one of the things I love the most. I'm very talented at teaching, and I love it. So I love to teach live coding, especially like introducing people to the practice. I love this very much. And for instance, I was in India recently, and I was teaching students around 14 to 18 years old who were German students. So I was teaching in German, and they were practicing German language. They were practicing music. They were learning music, and they were learning how to program. So it was very magical for me to see them engage, so having so much fun and engaging. These three areas that are getting together, and they were very creative. So live coding has potential for teaching in so many things and for questioning so many things as well. So what is really a composer? What is he? Who's really the author? What is really programming? What is improvising? And I'm using the code as a score because I'm a composer, so I see it as a score. But I also use it now making poetry inside the chord. So it's a very expressive tool, and it's notation for music as well.
Incredible. Has it changed your relationship to vulnerability and mistakes? So, we talked a little bit already about how it's sort of like letting the mask slip a little bit, right? Showing the code behind finished product and turning it into the performance. Do you think you've changed your relationship with mistakes and error then because of being an Algorave?
Definitely. I am a way more resilient person. I'm more open. I'm not afraid of being who I am, even with those things that, you have a voice telling you, you should not love me. And I know that people does. So, I deal with imposter syndrome. So every time I open my mouth in front of people and having this issue, but the more I play, the more I go out and the more I feel I can handle things better. So it is not that it disappears. I always get nervous. I always would prefer not making errors. But when it happens, I think now the virtuosity is not so much in how perfect you write the code or how amazing your message is, but it's in how you handle it emotionally. Things so vulnerable into people.
That leads nicely on to my next question, which is about the role of the body in terms of live performance, particularly when the work is kind of visually, simultaneously both visually minimal, but also quite complex, depending, again, as you discussed, what angle you're approaching it from. But I was wondering, are you aware of your physicality as a performer when you're live coding? Do you feel like it's a DJ set or beyond or less?
I think it's so unique, and every live coder takes it in a different way. There have been, of course, Kobe has a big academic root, and there's a lot of focus and a lot of research going on through the embodiments. But because I'm a composer and I have studied the history of musical instruments, and I understand how the gesture and the movement is influenced the music. But with the computer, I discovered that we don't need that anymore. So, I think my gestures come from, what did I do here? What is the error scrolling on my blind? Or I'm gonna drop the beat now. This is my gesture. And the beat was dropped. So, but I don't feel anything is missing. It's just how it is. But you see, coders using sensors and other things to break the pattern. So this is a very good question. I have no problem with being behind the computer, quite steady, because I'm showing the computer and people know that.
So, yes. How do you prepare for live coding? And I know we're going to get one from you in about an hour, but how do you prepare in general? Do you like to go in with a truly improvisational approach, or do you have a vague idea for how you might, what routes or what kind of method you might use? Or do you prefer to just absolutely better to see an optics?
No, I don't like to go to try to make people dance from scratch. We call it from scratch. When we did pop code written, we call it from scratch. And that is, then people will fall asleep and you put the cloud in the face because it takes me 5 minutes to write just the sound. So I prefer to have my tracks already prepared with the codes, my algorithms ready. But what I do like is improvise with that. So my composition is I'm composing the instruments, and then when I'm playing it and improvising with it, that's how it's.
This is such an interesting approach. It's reminding me a little bit of something Robert said ages ago about laptop as instrument and configuring the tools that we now have access to, which have increased in type and in speed. But it's not so much what we use them, how we use them, but it's what we use them for. Do you know what I mean? It's not so much the fact of having an instrument or having live coding as a disposable resource at your fingertips, but it's about what you do with it. So is there a way that you feel like yourself as an artist are present in the set, or does it feel very functional? This is kind of a little bit of a random question, but do you feel that there's much of yourself as an artist in these performances?
Yeah, it's everything really. Of course, I'm using a computer that someone has used. Of course, I'm tapping into the history of music, so this is not something I invented. But my performances are veering into myself. Even if I'm using, you will see I'm making visuals with patterns from other courses for community. I'm using software that someone else wrote. But I had made it my own for years. So, yeah.
Is your work political? Is your work political?
And no. I think everything is political, but we need to think about like what is politics, because everybody has a different meaning of it. Some people think politics is just arguing about parties and left right. For me, politics is the way we navigate the world, and I think it's very important that each individual is conscious of what they're doing and not following just trends because it makes you look like a better person or a better artist. I think it is with the fact that I'm a woman, I'm about to turn 50, I am Colombian, and I am doing what I do, what I'm doing, and I'm here with you is already very guilty because I'm not a white man who has music and has all the minds of those things. And I'm not making music with the bare equipment, with the old computer, and that's what I can afford, but I feel super free. And that is political. Because I see other people, other women coming and saying, I didn't do my criteria. I love when programmers tell me, my family did not let me study music and I have to study programming. Thank you for teaching me I can make music at this and I can put my both words together, you know? Things like this, or musicians who say, wow, it's really cool to make a mistake and let's see how to rescue the music. No? So that's political with my example, more than trying to convince everybody to go to polarize, because I think polarization right now is very dangerous area. So I think politics in my case is my inner world, how I navigate my reality and how can I show through my example and Panya.
That's a very beautiful answer. I'm going to ask you one more question before we move on to grilling Kai. But there's obviously so much potential with this field and an ever-evolving field. What do you feel the future of algorithmic live coding is going to be like in the next couple of years? Have you seen any changes or trends emerging now, the Algorave community or beyond?
When we started, we were like 50 people, like 15 years ago. And I'm also part of it because I love teaching digitizing people to use. And I've seen now you're talking about thousands. There was a point when I knew where every light coder was and when people were doing in France, when people doing in Peru. Now it's like, oh, you're like told me, yeah, I didn't know about that. So it's changing a lot, more people and more ideas. And what I've seen, of course, when you're such a pure movement study, so where you, all the ideas and all the good intentions are there. And it was very utopic for a while. And then we started having the human faults that we have when we're in community. And then it is difficult as well. But I still think that it's a nice community. I really invite anyone that they're interested. There are no boundaries that you can enter. The Itting you need is interested. So I think that's very good.
Thank you so much. Of his one. Oh, I'm gonna grill the Kai now. So Kai, there's so many different avenues and routes that I want to approach this interview with. But maybe you could start on by telling us a little bit about mediamorph and what were the origins of mediamorph and what was significant about its inception and the time that it emerged in Berlin. And give us a little bit of the history.
Well, before I answer that question, I would like to say you said one sentence about you try to introduce or you're starting to introduce poetry in code. And this really topic touched back. I think this is probably the way, and I really love to give a hello, what was the question again? mediamorph was an artist collective which was surrounded by a couple of friends who we met in a music circus traveling through Germany and Europe, and we all get reworked the slides about this computer and video, 60mm projections. After a couple of years, we landed in Berlin and decided to do something together. And we had a beautiful little Paris house and Origoufa, where we started our experiment, which lasted 12 years. And we had money for some reason at this time and bought a shit ton of computers, regularly Macintosh, VHS and Super 8 machines and Amigas and all this hella stuff, and started just to hang out there, play around and get up at noon and sit there with your bathrobe. And so we went out overnight and had been living in a city which was like in a complete vacuum of existence, because like the East, which was vacant spaces. You could go to places like Eimer, which was a club which didn't, where the house didn't exist officially because it wasn't anymore in the books of the city yet. So people could just go in there and create whatever they wanted, and there give lots of this little oasis of creativity, of art, and Techno was a soundtrack for that, which also brought people in and helped us to create a cultural space where we first of all could live off, because we had money at first and we sold drinks, but also have been completely experience a new idea of a societal idea. It was like naive internet, early digital era, and so on and so on. So everything was fucking new, and nobody knew what to do. It's similar to where we are now with AI, and of course like a world which is in a very strange moment. And but we've been, let's go see some more happy time lately. We don't know.
Were there any core beliefs or philosophies that were influencing you guys, or were you responding to the times that you're operating in? Can you share a little bit about the background?
I mean, the point is, we haven't been very academic. I did this, but this was a agonistic base feeling. We went to clubs, we went, which I think about dancing, drinking, taking drugs, having sex, being yourself. It was extremely inclusive, this was like, and no one talked about it. It was just like that, it was like something you had to get Eastern Europe, which was past part of the playground. You had technology which it was available before. You had this is in lower. Okay. And at the end of the day, it was a display one, and then you have also like developers like like what you called before, Deleuze coming in there with simple tiny cooks called RHIZOME. And as I said, nobody of us was an academic, and this was a very digestible format, which we appreciated a lot. No. And it really did the spot so much, and it was like saying with Baudrillard, he's all this simulation, the Monolake stuff, as I said, for us it was like, okay, this interesting thoughts, but it was, you read it like some far out science fiction books or some crazy comics, because it was really, for us, it was about twisting your mind in a way, and this ideas fit very well what we wanted to develop as a society without really knowing what it is. So
it seemed like the cases back then, which followed these, I guess, popular club theories coming to the fore, being scored by you guys in actual like praxis, you know, like you were taking these ideas and letting them infuse or influence your artistic approach then to events and to artistic outputs. Do you agree, or how do you feel about that relation to theory on the talk?
And we didn't really think a lot about that these days, you know? I mean, it was really like much more vibing, if you want, in a way, you know? It was, everything was just there and everything was fitting and perfect, and it was political, you know? I mean, it was anti-capitalistic, it was anti-hierarchical, it was feminist, it was for LGBT, LGBTQ, and so on and so on, but techno was music without words, because this was a moment where we refused, or where the youth culture refused to talk about that. There had been like fed too many lies, there had been fed too many falseness, and they wanted to develop something like that, which is also what's the reason why it was so extremely underground. We really refusing every influence from outside, you know, illegal clubs, illegal raves. Nobody paid any taxes, and it was like, because the whole idea was just like to isolate the self, to have a free space to develop something new with these new tools, which was of course internet, digital technology, in a free, well, I don't want to call it safe space because it wasn't safe, you know, the cops have been always around the corner, they just, but in your own space, you know.
The energy of that time, in reading accounts of it and hearing stories from it, it sounds like so singular, you know, like a totally unique time. Were you aware of how special what you were part of was at the time? Or, as you said before, but not thinking about it too much? Were you aware that was a sort of sense of history happening, or at least being reflected to you?
Well, I mean, reflecting afterwards, yes. It's a moment was just fucking great, you know. I mean, look at all the possibilities, look at all the spaces, look over here, look at it, olfactory, it's empty, it's bring a sound system in there, you know. But of course we had been aware that suddenly we could go to Russia, we could go to Latvia, we had, you know, I mean, people from these places came to us, and we could do something together, you know, we could communicate together, we could share the experience, and the experiences have been very different, but extremely valid, you know. And this is also another thing which freaked me out at this time already, that the Eastern Europe, or especially Eastern German culture and society had been just like eradicated, and said, okay, let's not talk about it. It's only we just implemented the Western system there. And if you had in the club, everybody was like, you know, the same in a way, you know, and everybody was talking about, doing, I don't know, I mean, you talk to each other, let's say like this, basically, you know, and we just realized that this is not the right approach, you know, and I think a lot of people felt that it's, so the time was,
What you said there about techno being a music that technically doesn't have language, or doesn't you rely on language, let's say it's motivation. That's such a fascinating concept. So I think a really unifying one, and particularly because you picked up on what I thought was a beautiful one by Alexandra about, do you think poetry is code? I was wondering a little bit about, turning just a bit of a random question actually, Gil. How do you feel about the role of language in relation to the work that you guys do? Were you very aware of the fact that language, maybe the most universal language, was no language at all? Is that maybe what you're saying, or you say a little important for us?
Okay, I mean, you know, the clubs have been about trance in a way, you know, you go in there, you lose yourself, you have super repetitive music, which goes like on till, you know, 2 days later. You take drugs. MDMA was a newish thing at this time, MDMA, which was a therapeutic drugs, that would be used for couple therapy at the beginning, you know, the people could finally talk to each other again. And this all together with being in this voids of, you know, what is the future, what is the Europe, what is Germany, you know, was very special in the way. And I think words haven't been enough to describe it, because the words hadn't been invented yet, if you want, you know. And but dance and trance and it was a very communal feeling, you know. And yeah.
I mean, because it seems a very intuitive link that in the maybe removing language a little bit from this cultural paradigm that you're in would also be space for your technology facilitating the visual elements, the visual elements of your work in original like VJ work. Can you comment a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, the point is, if you come to a club where you have a music without word, or where you have darkness as a concept, and then you bring video, which, because there is not only abstract but also has like content, like, you know, I mean, when we worked, we stole a lot from Disney, because Disney evil was somebody, it's evil, Disney evil, and or, you know, materials or political videos from Swampmeyer, you know, or Oka Fishing, early experimental artist. And we brought this in there, and this became the new content. So VJ was or what happens on the screen was basically the only thing which didn't have words, but images. And there was a time when you had a lot of people from the Ruhr, from the Basho scene, coming to the race because they like to have music, you know. And I strongly believe that the peaceful, colorful, happy-ish visuals, you know, turns them off in a way. And so this is maybe a kind of language, if you want, in a way, but I mean, that's definitely the only content you have which would describe something.
To bring it back to poetry again, some of the poetry that I researched in my time was concrete and visual poetry, which sought to literally unify people across cultures with a visual ignoranto. So if supported, you know, this idea that poems should be as easily understood as traffic signs or road signs, you know. And it seems that like healing loss of the image dovetails with, I guess, emerging trends in media theory as well. Is what you're saying about the power of the image and all of that.
Yes, in a way, yes.
Do you feel that mediamorph, how much was it influenced by rave culture of the 90s, or do you feel it is during the influencing? Can you also tell us a little bit about Chromapark and their techno art exhibition?
Okay, for the first part of the question, I cannot answer that, because I mean, it was really just one big stew of cultures and things happening at this time. He also is some shows some influencers maybe, and so if you talk about Chromapark was like the first exhibition which brought together the visual artists of the club and techno scene in Germany or continental Europe. I mean, there's like, you know, which was quite different from the other chapter in the UK at this time, you know. I mean, there was like a bit of a different scene. And had been over 100 artists coming together there, and it was 10 days, 24 hours a day. So during the day it was an exhibition. We had like internet and old electricity building, you know, a power generator place, the E-Werk here in Berlin. And during the day was an exhibition, and at night the exhibition would be like pulled up under the roof, because this was a huge place, was 30 meters high ceilings. And it became a dance floor, and we had like really amazing lineups every night, and then video artists really shows, and then the morning somebody cleaned, and then the whole thing came down again, and people came in. And it was super interesting to see really the bandwidth of different approaches. It's a bit like here, you know, and it's like, I mean, sitting here from very different artistic backgrounds, but having something very common, and bringing these people together. And the first Chromapark was really like for me, it was just blown away how many people, and everything was organized by a fax machine, by the way, and because there was no email yet.
And even about. Do you feel that there is a specific events or elements, be Chromapark or another event that sort of recaptured the spirit of what mediamorph are trying to do with squats?
I don't know. I really feel hard to answer this question, which tries to compare something. There you lots of at this time. You had Art for Two, Steirischer Herbst. You had Zona coming up at the beginning. You had of course CNT coming and so on. I mean, there would be always like a lot of great, ambitious media festivals, which also popular culture either come. I think it's about because techno is popular culture. This is blues culture. It's pop. It's radical in a way, and it's for me. This is an important part of what I like. So was not, but see even das name.
Name drop is I have another comparison question for you. I'm sorry. Do you map any parallels between the cultural and political turmoil of Britain in the 1990s and now?
Well, as I said before, I mean, at this time it was like something nobody expected. I mean, the fall of the wall, the fall of the Iron Curtain was really a moment which couldn't have been foreseen in this way, and also the implication it had was also nobody was prepared for that. And what we have now is a moment in time where we still have to discuss the question, is a bad thing, and we do not want that, we do not want that people discriminated because of the gender, color, stuff they like, people they like, I mean, this really like, I mean, for me, it's I'm looking at this camera right now, and it's really like a park, and but I think still the tide is still the same, and we still have to get out. We still have to make sure that we never let the assholes win, and that and art is like the language for that, And I think a club is a place where people can come together in a experimental, free moment and place in their lives and get out of that with a fresh idea.
His love is the medium. As it
Rap is the medium, man.
actually. On that very optimistic note, Kai, we're going to move on to Robbie before we happen.
Yeah, but before we move on, I need to say that Chromapark came just back in my memory after you talked about it, and it was Lanka. So, as someone who witnessed it, I liked you say it. Indeed, it felt. This was a moment in time where in the city, it felt like this culture that was kind of emerging or becoming established, or something in between, is significant. That was the overwhelming feeling I had.
It's so wonderful to hear you say that, because even though Kai is claiming that they weren't thinking that much in terms of like what media work we're trying to do, I think even the very urge to put together an exhibition where a showcase shows you within it the urge to document, right? So I think that like does show an awareness of this real or something good enough, Bergie.
Yeah, but I agree with Kai that we didn't feel about the implications of what we were so. We were so busy just doing it. But of course, when you do something like this in a place like Everard, which was really like 4 places like Berghain, Everard was one of these places where I think this is an industrial space. So this was definitely a cathedral for electronic music. And everyone who was there had the sense of, we don't know what this is, what we're doing here, but it's technically better.
Which is it's an amazing thing to have documented or to have been a part of, for sure. Robert, I have plenty of questions for you, but I'm actually going to start by quoting yourself back to you, if you'll forgive me. You said before that a lot of the music you enjoy embraces the idea of a timeless state. Is this music as a conlet modulates as sound as a timbre or structure. At club nights, just about the experience of a space to want to spend the light outside Dolo Tarayin Street. As such, your installation pieces span on these properties is scoring light and sound longer Thursday. And when I was researching where worth. I just thought that was such a beautiful boat, and I was wondering if we could use that as the jumping off point to ask you a little bit about your laser work. Chris, you expanded a bit more about on that idea of the expanded space and how your work speaks to that.
I want to come back actually to the general club discussion before talking about my work, because I had a revelation just now. And the fact that techno was this kind of timeless state of sound, of course, we're very well together in a city that, for historical, very unique reasons, had no curfew. So I did it was American soldiers that managed to convince the city government that it's okay that the bars can be open as long as they want. And this allowed also that all these illegal spaces had no time constraint. When you came to another countries in the 90s, let's say, that's a very strict opposite, the US, and at 1 o'clock you can't get alcohol anymore, and at 2 o'clock the music stops. You cannot achieve a timeless state in that constraint. But if you know that it's Friday evening, and as long as people are willing to dance, there's music. This, of course, creates a timeless state in a very different sense. And this, I think, this had a very, very huge impact on this culture to say, we're not doing pop, we're not doing a 3-minute song that has a meaning and an end. We do something that is timeless. And to answer your question, I think I always liked club as this experience of I go there and I don't know what time it is. No one had a smartphone. Most people don't even had a watch at this time. So you go there and you stay as long as you want. And then you go. And for me, this always had a museum-like quality in a positive sense. So, and my own artistic work, be it music or be it my installations, I really like this idea that something is going on and you enjoy it as long as you want.
I think that relates well. So will it be to just this whole showcase in general, where we're inviting multiple different entry points to the work of yourself and the other artists, but it does seem that techno, even just its material manifestation, lends itself so well to, as you said, the time state, which is in itself whether you want to go to the flow state or it's like try.
I mean, it also nicely corresponds to the fact that you don't need to be a musician anymore, because you have the sequencing, you have the drum computing. So it's not about I need to play the drums for 24 hours. It's about I turn the 808 on, and if I feel that it's getting boring, I change the pattern. The whole point of techno music is that it freed you from the laboratory's work of actually playing everything in note. And it's the same with Blind Cody. The thing runs, and then you can step back and observe it. And you can observe your own work right in front of you, and then you decide when it's time to change it. And there's so much power in that.
Absolutely, and it's a wonderful point about, again, it's got a historical materialist point about the technology that evolves in tandem with this urge to keep it going, to let it unschool, if you will. You've written and spoke a lot about the relationship between light and sound in your work, and I was wondering maybe you could tell us a little bit about that dynamic and how you've explored it through laser workspace, such as Lumière or other works.
As Kai very much already explains, that the visual element was something that was always present in contract at the very beginning. And exploring what we can do with an image or moving images or movement in an image together with sounds was a very a driving artistic stream in this whole scene. There were a lot of people exploring there, taking short snippets of video and repeating them, for instance, because that was technologically easy. So there was a lot of artists. I'd like to mention Daniel Flung here as a prominent example, or Alexandra Cárdenas, people who have been working in this field at the beginning, who took short snippets of, for instance, commercials, like a short snippet, I mean 2 seconds, and have a 2-second loop of a stupid commercial, which turns into something completely brain altering if you see it for half an hour. And so that type of visual correspondence to music was always the. And my work of lasers came from the fact that I just thought I have not much experience in doing video work by myself. Let's try a different medium. And, as an engineer by trade, I thought, how hard can it be? And I just started. It was very hard.
I want to come back to what you said about the laser work, but I'd also love to ask you just a little bit, just to say a little bit more about what you mentioned there in terms of VJs or query video artists taking loops from, let's say, advertisements of pop culture and repurposing them now, because it seems to me in internet culture that that's kind of a massive scale of what's happening like now, you know what I mean? That it's like this kind of, there's so much raw material out there. It's not just a Versky Fiat we borrow from now or of random images. In the kind of infinite space of the internet, do you feel that that's changed how people take a visual references to help coach?
Not just the visual reference. I think that the general spelling these days for anyone who is creating is what to do with all this input. And this is why, for instance, live coding is such a refreshing approach, because you're live coding. That means you have 2 hands, you have 1 brain, and there's a limit of what you can do. You can't write code a symphony with 20 individual voices running at the same time and control them. So you need to have a vision of what you want to achieve. You need to say, this not, this not, this not, and this also not. And the more offerings you have technologically, the more your job becomes as to become a curator and decide against options. And my personal strategy really is, what of all the possible things should I not do? And that is a very different situation than it was 30 years ago, when the question was, is a computer fast enough to do at least one thing? So
I think that's it's such an interesting velocity to now, given the speed of everything. My next question pertains a little bit to speed, that I promise you will get back to the lasers, was, in such an accelerated culture, you've spoken and written before about how it's not necessarily that you have a tool, it's what you do with this. And in that sort of sense, you say a little bit more about Pod in terms of the instruments that are now in your arsenal and how to choose what to do with them.
you mean how I decide what to do with them? I have no philosophy there. I try to master a few instead of having an abundance. But I'm a liar because I had way too much. And every time I'm in my studio, I think I should get rid of all of that. But I also love technology. So it's like kill your darlings, you know. I think if I just had a laptop and I would say everything I do has only 4 channels, 4 tracks, that should be enough. I would probably be a happier person, but it's hard to do that. But this brings me to one project which is very dear to me. This is the CBM project of the old computers, because there I did something that was basically impossible, making a light show with basically 1 megahertz 8-bit computers, which is completely not sufficient for doing audio digital signal processing unless you reduce your idea to most basic atom of what it could see. And there I had 3 voices, so I can play 3 notes at a time. And I was worried at the beginning that this is limiting. And the longer I worked on it, the more I realized that sometimes even 3 voices is 1 voice too much. And as someone who is in the studio used to the fact that I can just say duplicate, 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 select all, duplicate. And, you know, running 100 tracks, and yeah, sure, all fine. The fact that you can make music with 3 tracks, and it works for 1 hour, that was something that I didn't expect, and that I took home for as a lesson for my only future practicing.
You've talked before about lasers, audio-visual note event. I was wondering, could you say a little bit more about maybe Lumière specifically? Because I think this is such an amazing project. And also, if it's not too much to ask, but at the same time, could you comment a little bit on the spatial relations that a project like Lumière changes in its presentation? For example, Alexandra mentioned about there's this sort of vulnerability and exposure when you're live coding because you're showing the errors that might come on the space. But for you here, am I right in thinking that you were not on stage, you were actually behind the audience? Will you comment on that dynamic of it?
I mean, okay, for Lumière, I had so many comments, but the first comment is I was on stage for the team here, and I built a shield so that the lasers don't hit me because it's dangerous. And then I realized during the premiere that it's actually totally stupid because I like to see what I'm doing. And with the lasers, I don't have a preview monitor or anything like that. So I don't see my own work. And I thought, this is ridiculous. I do this because I want to do it, and then I can't perceive it for myself. This is like playing a symphony whilst hearing headphones with white noise. That makes no sense. And this is why I moved into the audience. And afterwards, I realized that this is the best place to be. The other thing that was unexpected and important is that at the beginning, I thought I could improvise that. So I built a system where I basically used the sounds that are created when I'm controlling the lasers as my sound information. And there's an extreme synchronicity, of course, then between what you see and what you hear. The problem is, drawing a circle means you hear a sine wave. But drawing two circles does not mean you hear two sine waves. It means you hear a really, really complex, distorted waveform because you draw one sine wave, then you move the laser in darkness to another place, then you draw another sine wave. So you get a really distorted wave. And I felt that the sound you get and what you see, they don't fit together. They don't make sense together. And as a solution for that problem, I built a software that allows to assign a sound that I synthesize to a visual shape. So arbitrarily, I say, okay, this is a square. Let's make a sound that sounds like a square, but whatever this sound is. So I say, okay, square sounds B. True square sound R. And once this is defined, I treat it as one single thing, as it is God-given that it's like this. And when I wrote the music, that meant I wrote the music for the sound and for the laser at the same time. So I wrote boom, 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 and it has three circuits. And the hi-hat is a line. So boom makes the circuit and the line. And that was extremely refreshing as a concept. And that is the whole idea with Lumière. That's the whole idea of Lumière.
It sounds to me as if you're constructing in mind of like our whole language. To my untrained ear,
I try to construct a language, indeed, with all the weirdness of language. We know there's parts of language that seem to be logical. There's parts of language that kind of evolve for no obvious reason. No, there's mistakes that kind of you got used to. So yeah, you have all these elements of language and
such a fascinating. That's right. Again, I'm conscious of the time, so I want to ask you a little bit about mediamorph and sorry, not mediamorph. Excuse me, Monolake. I'm gonna throw some
curveball. Did you ask Kai about Monolake then? I'm totally quiet.
That would be really getting the chaotic prayers. But I would love to ask you a little bit about your original vision for Monolake and how the city of Berlin behaves.
So the great brutal truth is there was no wishes whatsoever.
I'm sensing a Lumière.
Because this is how things worked in the early 90s. We just were exploring, and we were me and this gentleman just sitting there. We were just together exploring what we can do with a synthesizer and a drum machine, and we just happened to knew to know people who had a record label. And it just happened that we gave them the tape because someone told us that they might be interested, and they listened to the tape and then they say, yeah, certainly release it. We at this point, we didn't even have the name Monolake. We just made music. And the rest is history, so to say. Quite literally, I think this is something that if you grow up in a time where you are so conditioned by social media and by everything that if you start something, you have to have an agency and you have to have an Instagram account and you have to look cute on the internet and all that kind of stuff. I'm really happy that we started this whole thing before that was happening. Really.
I can tell you the sound. I mean, another question that I had relating a little bit to Monolake is just the influence of nature in your work. I've asked this question before in this interview series, but I return to it a lot because for somebody who's so technologically pioneering and on span adept, there's a quite a strong presence, I think, particularly in not being of hands-on and your rep words. I love what you wrote about how Le Track Cyan, it's a ecological field recording, and one of the bass sets is the sound of a mosquito.
Look at each other, sorry, and then the mosquito face line is great. I started sound engineering at the film school, and I needed a field recording of some insects. And so I woke up at 5 a.m. and went to Grunewald with my portable recorder and my microphone. And there were the mosquitoes, awesome. And I only thought about recording them. I didn't thought about they actually attacking me. So I had to stand still for 5 minutes to make this recording, and the mosquitoes were fighting me. But there was this, the whole recording is boring, but there's this one moment where this mosquito is really flying exactly like 1 millimeter high by the microphone. And we had a sampler, as everyone else, and I just made a loop out of it, and we played it 3 octaves lower, and suddenly this little mosquito trying to and that was the bass line of the first Monolake there. So, happy accidents.
Fantastic. Everyone loves mosquito too. I'm gonna ask you one more question, Robert, before we go to Q&A, because I know that people will have questions. But this might be a little bit of a cheeky forward-facing question, but do you view LLMs and AI tools and the technology that we're being bombarded with now, even just as citizens, alone as programmers or coders or artists, do you view them in the same way that you would view a laptop as an instrument? Do you think that these tools are instruments in the same way that evolving technology over the last 30 years or so has been an instrument for you, the Lisbo, Weisesiger?
Oh, this is such a complicated question to answer. I just today had a longer email exchange with some Silicon Valley venture capital person who wants to get in touch with me because I'm one of the able-tos and suggest a great product they have for prompt-based sound generation. And I wrote him back a few concerns that I had about this whole thing. And it took me quite some time to write it back. So I'm not sure if I could answer this within this round here, but I think of writing something up about it because it really concerns me. It concerns me on many, many levels. Starting from authorship to the idea of creativity. When the Suno CEO said that he wants his idea is that he wants to solve the problem of the tedium of making music, I thought, Jesus, actually, I like it. I make music because I like to be forced to push my boundaries. And if I can't push my boundaries anymore, and if I can't fight against my limitations, and if I can't have happy accidents that come out of forcing my fingers to play keys that I can't play, and suddenly something new happens. If all this is taken away by prompting something that creates a perfect song that is a background for something, it would be I don't know what to do. No, I don't know. So long story.
Your answer thing, absolutely. Your answer thing relates really beautifully to what both Bai and Alexandra have already shared about, the freedom to not keep filing what you're doing, and then the vulnerability of exposing your mistakes and turning them into part of the process.
And I think ownership is very important, because when somebody asks what is a good piece of music, the answer can only be something that is personal, something that you made because you want to do. I mean, we're all using the same NVIDIAs. We're all using the same tools. We're all using the same computers. So what makes this piece of music more interesting than that piece of music? Maybe it's the context. Maybe it's the person who made it. Maybe it's the circumstances in which it has been created, and or performed, or anything else. And I think this is an important value.
Is this outsourcing where it's very human processes robs something, or I guess, anchor spirit of the work at Arma? That's enough for me. We want to hear from the audience. Perfect. So I want to just first of all allow the panel to ask each other questions, and then we're gonna go and even just put your hand up so you were wrote.
Thank you. Sorry, just this burning question. Because you mentioned how with machines you didn't need to be a musician anymore. And that's something I question me very much, because I think everybody who makes an intention with sound is a musician. And now we can extrapolate that into AI, large language models, and all of this technology we had discussed mission. And what I see is our need as humans to automate stuff. So with the rhythm machines, you have this automation, and that it's supposed to make it easier. But now we know it doesn't make it easier. It's just another level. So for me, I think AI and large language models and all this technology is just another level of automation that can also give us a lot of freedom to break different things. What do you think?
As I said, I think it's a complicated question. Of course, you can become a virtuoso on a drum configure. And then you're definitely a musician, even if my old music teacher at school would have despised this idea. So that is very clear. And the technology behind all these tools, like large language models, is something that is absolutely fascinating. And I could see amazing opportunities of what to build there. I'm just questioning the current business models behind them and the ethics. And I think in the current state, the technology is very much bound to monopolic resources that make it really hard for me to feel ownership, personality, and something like this. It's very different if I can train my own model in a local machine with my own sounds and say, okay, this is a very, very cool technology. This allows me to get a different understanding of my own art, or build my own co-pilot or whatever. There's tremendous opportunities in the technology. I just see in this current political, and the political in a broader sense, tech pro political venture capital driven society. I don't see that my interest as an artist is congruent with the interests of the people who are monopolizing the tools. And that is something that is very different from, let's say, a company like Roland operating a drum computer. So that's
impossible. Kai, do you want to weigh in on this, Doshu, or are we going to go to Yodi?
Well, I mean, I'm a real artist, so and I was always very jealous of the musicians in the early 90s, what cool computers they have. I really had to do a lot more handwork for all that stuff. But in the terms of AI, especially generated AI, I think that I totally agree, fuck the tech pros, but I think if you have to use it like a filter, I mean, I think the point is like you said, train your own models, use a filter, and select what comes out of it. If you ain't, then well, it's gonna be nice, nice-ish.
Yeah. True. Let's out. Okay, so we're gonna go to Q&A. I think you maybe have 5 or so minutes for questions. So, well, of course.
Hi, my question is for Alexandra. I know you recently did a tour in South Asia to Sri Lanka and India. I'm curious about how that experience was for you and if it will affect your practice in any way. Thank you. That was a wonderful experience. It was the Goethe Institute who took me, teaching students of German language in South Asia. I discovered Sri Lanka for the first time, and it was mind blown. Especially because I'm a spiritual person and I have influences from many religions, and there I could find a place where I could be happy being part Hindi, part Catholic, part Buddhist, and then I felt like welcome everywhere. So that was mind blowing, Kenny. Of course, the beauty, and by the way, there was big rains, so anyone can help with the collaborating in the recovery of the houses and the cutting people. There is a link online where everybody can send some money to help. I mean, because it is a big destruction in Sri Lanka recently. But of course, having the opportunity to meet all these people, not only the students, but their teachers, their parents, and the communities around them, have made me realize how important it is what I do. It made me really feel busy doing at being useful. I'm being useful because I'm bringing opportunities for kids to engage with technology in different ways that the industry wants to show what technology is. So let even know that this belongs to us and that they can collaborate and educate themselves as part of this community. So great. And this is what I do always, but having this in India was very special because of course there's such a big difference culturally. So it opened my world, my horizon, and yeah, I was very touched by many examples of how beautiful the approach, the gentleness of people is towards technology. I mean, it is not generalized here, but I saw many good examples of how well educated they are. And not only in technology and mathematics, you will see Indian people like them having amazing jobs because they are so intellectually well prepared. But also there is a spiritual preparation that I think we're missing in the West, or maybe we're on our way to recover. Because I recovered politics, I think I'm an artist who is not in touch with their spirituality, can't bring truly the message of art. It doesn't mean that they have to be religious, but it means that an artist is connected to something superior that usually people don't see, and you're kind of translators into this. So this South Asia trip was a good moment to reconfirm this and see it in machine and see how they can be super smart and have a big vocabulary, but at the same time be very humble at heart and being gentle with the others and respectful. I think that was what I take the most from my salvation trip. Any other questions? This question is for all three of you. For upcoming artists or people that will be interested in what we're doing, what would you say that between the art and the revenue, which is always which whatever work you get on, how much should they focus on big festival versus investing on the art as a passion?
Always art as a passion. Everything else comes by itself.
You can't predict the outcome, it's pointless to start with an idea of I want to be famous. It just doesn't work like this, and it's a recipe for disappointment. So I think start with the idea of I want to do something because I want to express myself. Because that's the only thing that is valid.
And prepare to be hungry.
Yes, of course.
No idea. I think follow your passion and all those things that you find limiting. Like, don't delete this, that there's no money in music or there's no money in burning. I think it's this we need to get rid of. And follow your passion, because then when you truly follow it, is what you can give to the world. Everyone has a unique gift to give to the world. If you don't follow your passion, you will never be able to give it. You will need to struggle, that's for sure, because that's the human condition. But when you struggle and you go on, you will become what you truly are.
Okay, we maybe have time for one or two more questions. I'm going to give you the mic.
First of all, thank you for your talk. And it's like I was really inspired by what I heard you like just sticking the simplicity and all your personal background, and that's how brings the like a new creation at the end of the day. So it's like my question is like so like while there's AI or like use some sort of a useful tools like restricting the personality. At the same time, the authority like somehow try to like censor like a personal perspective towards like what's going on, whatever more like political view or like some sort of how you look at the community or society. So it's like in such a situation, what do you think about what's new media art for music or media art can do for such a situation? I want to see your respectable like overview for the next 2 decades or whatever.
Well, I will say that by showing how we can create art
With digital media, we are already giving that's a political stance. He's saying we can be creative with this, and we can choose not to be completely overwhelmed by the noise, technological noise, and social media noise. Ms. Robert said very clearly, when you create something, you need to select, and mostly you have to say no to most opens and choose any of few things. And I think that's what we can do to show with our art. How can technology be a force of good?
I mean, just like a hammer. That's what I always believe. I come out of a very political youth with, from mostly autonomous or anarchist teams, and everybody hated me within computers. And and I just, for me, it was just a hammer, I mean, you can do whatever you numbers it. And I always love people. That's it's very quantitative. Well, here's nothing care.
We maybe have time for one more question. Anyone has a burning question?
Awesome, yeah. Thank you for the talk, firstly, all three of you, for you too. I was just kind of feeling that from what you guys said about old Berlin scenes, and maybe from you too, that there was a sense of like organizing, and that you had to like organize things. We have like in the 90s and stuff like that. So I was just wondering if there's any sense of like how you organized, or was this ever something that like you had to do, that you consciously did, or was it just part of your art? So like organizing the parties, organizing record labels, organizing get-togethers, meetups, organizing programmers to get together, or was this just something that happened, or is there? To all of you three, as this general question.
I'm very sorry I didn't follow the question from the beginning. Can you please repeat?
And I was just saying from the start, if you were saying about the 90s, or regular ease of in Berlin, that there was this sense of people getting together and taking over spaces and doing things, bringing people together, partying. And you were talking about Algorave as well, and that's kind of like an organization. Like, people are getting together, putting energy towards something and trying to make something happen for a get-together, for people to come together. So is there ever a conscious thing you thought about? And if it is, like, how did you organize, or how did you code people together?
Well, the Light Coders community was been self-organized from the beginning, and At the beginning, I was organizing events all the time. And then recently, I got a burnout. And then I realized I couldn't handle the stress of organizing anymore. But I look for ways to give back to the community on the other kind of things. But there's always, it's very necessary to have people who are there organizing, talking to the artists, taking to the venue. And this requires a lot of energy. I can't do it in what, but a lot of people are doing. So it is necessary to have this kind of representation.
Did this answer your question? It does, yeah. No.
Okay. Okay, we got time for one more question. Why not? If you get the mic, just over here, just so that I understand.
Thank you very much for all your sharing and input. Excuse me, can people be quiet, please? No, okay. Yeah, I'm going to shout. And yeah, I was wondering, but if I was sharing, you seem like with a partner in the practice. And I can read a bit this you, Alexandra, though, political or art and self-organizing archives and after this and something so that I had to bring some of it. I was wondering, like, like art work is kind of like coming with. You don't know when you're caught and when you're in gas, okay, and many possibilities to go. Like, because you're really, to take logical calls, so we went to the direction of corporations, right? Or activists, or communities, or benefits,
To the sorry for yeah, so something like this. So like monetizing. So that this is becoming a way to continue your practice. So my question is wrapping towards your maybe you could talk to your down self.
Like what was in the back of the mind? What is your loudest voice? Why did you choose this way that you continue to practice it is skill or blah.
It's difficult to hear for some reason. But if I am correct,
Let's see if I understood the question. Is it what made me go through all this uncertainty around it? Yeah, it is already helpful for many artists around the audience or something because we maybe emerging or mid-career and maybe you're looking for, you don't know what is ahead the future, you don't know. I think AI and everything changing and maybe sometime maybe it's a loudest voice in your head that saying no, this but not that. Something like this. Maybe you were sharing your personal experiences.
I'm sorry. I think the main point is to not be afraid. This is all I can tell you.
Yeah, and I would add, we really need to learn to be fine with uncertainty because you will never reach point. I don't know, we have idea of an already accomplished artist. I would like to add that to Robert, but I think there's always a level of uncertainty. It's not the money, it's relations, it's your health, whatever. So I think that's a human condition, and the most we can be fine with uncertainty, the better. And when you're young, I think follow your guts. What makes you give that is the answer.
Actually, the idea that the uncertainty gets less the more successful you get, I think is flawed. It's the opposite. Because the more successful you are, the more you feel the pressure to maintain that amount of success. And this brings you to a situation that can't be solved because you want to do exactly what you are famous for, because that's what people expect, but you want to do something completely different because that's also what people expect. So trying to do what you want to do because it comes from yourself becomes much, much harder than more people from the outside telling you what they like or dislike about your work. So in retrospective, I say this uncertainty you have at the beginning is precious and embrace it.
And just like to, my definition of success is like to get up every morning having survived another night. Yeah?
Speaking of surviving the night is far from over because you're going to have a performance by all of our artists. And then we also didn't even mention at the start that we're going to have a DJ set by Bani Vachi. He's going to play Jesus Arrived for that. So we're going to wrap up this part of the interview, but we're going to have a live coding set by Alexandra. We're going to have some music from Robert and some visuals from Kai before we turn it into a real party with Bani's set. So I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much to our three guests, Alexandra, to Kai, to Robert, for their amazing insights. And a massive thank you to the Studio 1111 team, to Antonia and to all of the Body of Work team, to Patrick, to Marius, Sebastian, Just, Eunice, and everybody who's contributed in whatever way to bring this together. And thank you for being an amazing audience and enjoy the show. Happy Sunday.